Hello, and welcome to the Watershed Moments podcast, where I and other therapists discuss real life, everyday mental health issues to give you real and practical help to live a healthier life for yourself and with others. Now, if you want more content like this, be sure to visit our website at watershedinitiative.com to dig into the library of podcasts, articles, and courses that we've made just for you. And of course, if you need face-to-face help, definitely reach out to our partner affiliate, Lifeology of Richardson and Frisco at 214-556-0996 to get connected with a therapist or life coach. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Watershed Moments podcast. We are doing a series of really Q&As and talking through real-life examples of situations that people are going through as it relates to COVID-19, shelter in place, and all that kind of stuff. And so we're going to pick up another example, another real-life scenario of what probably a lot of you guys are going through right now. And so, Shanda, you've got a situation that probably is relevant for a lot of people right now. Maybe you can describe it for us and we can talk about it. Go for it.
So right now, the way the world is, our stress levels are so much higher. I know in my own home, I'm working from home and homeschooling my son and trying to fit so much in. And my husband is going to work. And there's other couples who both are working from home. And the stress is so high because we're all stretched so incredibly thin right now. What are some ways that we can navigate the conflict that's going to naturally come up out of these types of situations?
Yeah, so let me clarify and also kind of maybe add some context to that one because I think that's probably that's everybody in maybe in different ways right now. But what I hear out of that question or that experience is everyone had a certain level of load that they were carrying before, and that load hasn't changed, and it's been added onto because of shelter in place, homeschooling, working from home. And so it's not that we have been able to just readjust and kind of reorganize things. We have a certain kind of container of what we can kind of manage. And now there's also a whole bunch of stuff put in that container, and we have to kind of deal with the conflict that comes out of that as it relates to at home, just negotiating that between maybe husband and wife and family, adult kids, about how do we manage the lower bandwidth that we have. Is that fair? Does that kind of describe maybe about what you're talking about?
Yeah.
All right, so then let's kick it out to the group here. And I'd love to hear if that is relevant for you and if you have experienced that. So tell us your stories, guys.
I, I'll jump in. I'll jump in as a person who's trying to manage all of those, exactly what Shanda said. On top of the aspect of my wife and I are both at this point working exclusively almost at home. I leave the house, I think 2 days a week to go and do video shoots for my other role at the church. But primarily, I'm here working from home, doing teletherapy. My wife is in another room. She is a project manager for a massive account, and it's all consuming, as well as we have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And my 6-year-old has multiple assignments due every single day. And we have a dog who stares at us every day. I've seen the anxiety levels on everyone's face, everyone's heightened anxiety at this point. But also what we've learned is just bandwidth and also expectation levels. I think that is the biggest thing that I've noticed. There's what are our expectation levels? Because for my kids, their expectation level was, oh my goodness, mommy and daddy are home all the time. It's just a free for all, right? It's the weekend every single day. And it's like, no, that's not at all of what it is, right? And then for my wife and I, we had to come to a conclusion of, hey, what are our expectation levels? Do you have to be in every single meeting that goes on, or are there some meetings you don't have to be in? Are there some times in my schedule that I can not have a case, right? Or I can put some things off so that I can be. So really, there's been a give and take on both sides. But if you're not able to sit down and have that conversation, then you're going to run into some big struggles. And so as a family, we've actually kind of sat down and laid down the groundwork of, hey, this is what this looks like, right? These are some of the expectations of what bandwidth is for us. Because to your point, Lee, and to your point, Shanda, so many of us are getting pulled in a million different directions. Some people don't have enough to do, but for a lot of us, for a lot of people, they're just trying to survive. every day looks like Groundhog Day to them. I don't know how many people I've spoken to that have said to me, you know, time no longer exists, right? I don't even know what day it is. Like I'm just trying to survive this moment. And so for me, it's been, and I'll just speak for myself personally, it's been balance, figuring out what balance looks like for me. Whether it's I make sure that I'm working out, I'm making sure that I'm eating, trying to quote unquote eating right. But things like that of finding some sort of normal for me. And once I was able to get back to a sense of normalcy, then things started to just fall into place for me. But before that, before I had that normalcy of creating a routine for myself, then it was very overwhelming because it felt like I was being pulled in every direction and I couldn't figure out any kind of way to go. So at this point now I can structure it, and that's what I've had to do is recognize, and let me say this, I am not a person that goes to structure. I am a 9 on the Enneagram, and I am totally free flowing and cool with that. But what I've learned in this season is there is definitely a place for structure and there's definitely a place for organization. And when you can implement those things in your life, it helps things flow a little bit better. And also, it helps the people around you as well. It helps them have some ways to navigate and know which direction you're going to go in next. So I hope I didn't go off on too many tangents, but I'm sure I did at this point.
No, that's all good because I think those are all they're all intertwined and they're all very relevant for what people are experiencing. Yeah, absolutely. Laura, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think definitely what Adrian said about structure is so very important. I mean, I've had that conversation with a couple of my clients and with the people in my home about we have to have some type of idea on what life looks like in this new time because we had a rhythm that we did and we all kind of understood what the rhythm was before, and now a lot of that's just thrown straight out the window and there is no rhythm anymore. And and as human beings we really thrive better when we have a rhythm and a cadence to our lives. So developing that, and one thing that I've really encouraged people to do is, and I try to do for myself as well, is find at least one thing that you did before that you can still do now at the same time in the same way, and try to hold on to that one thing as like this is still the same, finding some sameness from before and to now. And for me that's working out, going and working out and making sure I get that time makes a huge difference to me as far as my mental state. I can tell when I don't do it that it makes a big difference for me. But I think for other people, it may be something totally different. It may be spending time with God, or it may be, which that's also very, very important, but lots of different things that you can do. And it simply may be that you watch the same TV show at the same time every night that you did before. That may be the thing, that the only thing that you can do that is the same as what you did before. But finding something like that that you can build in really makes a big difference.
Yeah. I love that, and I was actually trying to articulate that to someone the other day, and you just did it a whole lot better than me. But I think trying to anchor yourself in some type of cadence, where when a lot of things are taken away from you, you feel like you have no control. It helps so much to be able to say, okay, there's a few things that I can hold on to that kind of gives me a sense of like a reminder, like, hey, like this is today. I'm here right now, and I have this, and it kind of grounds you into a sense of stability and sanity, right? I think this particular situation, I'd love to kick it back to you, Shanda, just to maybe get a little bit more nuance in terms of how you see this play out for those that you talk to, but also for yourself as well. But I think a couple angles I want to look at this from is how we negotiate the amount of bandwidth that we have. And so every person, and I'll use the analogy that everyone has kind of this container of bandwidth, and everyone can choose, what am I going to put into this container and make a priority, right? And if you were doing well with that before COVID-19, then great, you have good boundaries and you're able to kind of manage that. But now because of COVID, there's a lot of things that are just kind of dumped out of that container. Now we got to reorganize everything all over again. And the expectation I think a lot of us have in our minds is that we want to try and put everything that we were doing before back in that container. And we want to be able to do it just as well, right? And that's just not a reality, because that container still only has a certain amount of volume you can contain. But now you have COVID and all that goes with it in that container first. That's a non-negotiable. We have to deal with that. And so if your expectation is that that you're going to be able to do your job as well as you did before, or you're going to be able to produce as much as you did before, or that you're going to be able to parent as well as you did before, or homeschool as well as you want to, or that the house is going to look the way you want it to, right? There's all these things that we're like, oh, these are the things that created some sense of normalcy, but all that's been hijacked, right? And so it really requires us to go back and evaluate, well, what can I fit in my container? Because if I try to fit all these things back in to the same degree I had them before, then that is a surefire way to break down your emotional and mental health. Like that's going to degrade after a while, right? But then adding in one more element in there of when you're doing that exercise, but also knowing that you're not the only person that's in charge of defining what goes in that container. You have a spouse as well, right? And so now you have this issue where, okay, husband and wife has between the two of them, we have a certain container, but then now husband and wife is putting in different things that they think is priority. Like it's really important that I maintain my job performance, or it's really important that I maintain the house structure, or the cleanliness, or whatever it might be. Now we're all negotiating what's going to get into that container, and that creates a lot of conflict and strain. And so I think I heard that from you, Shanda, earlier. Is that like there's these conflicts that you might observe between spouses about like how do we work well in our environment together, knowing that, hey, maybe we're in situations where we're having to work at home more and to share a space more. How we negotiate the way that actually that the way that plays out and the way that happens. So I don't know if that kind of hits the spot that you're talking about, Shanda, but maybe talk a little bit more if there's anything that you're hearing that you would add on to or comment on. But if I want to try and ground this back into the reality of what's going on for people, and if it actually is addressing the situation that you're talking about specifically. What do you think?
So one of the things that we've had to do is come up with a schedule that we're all in agreement with, that's like Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday are kind of a free for all. But for us, a way that we've helped with our conflict is having that schedule. So even my 6-year-old knows what's expected of him for the day, and we each have our responsibilities that we need to tackle that day, and we get to mark it off of the list, and that's really helped with the conflict. But also having to find grace and empathy inside ourselves for each other, even for our children, and being able to give them the emotional space to say what they need to say and just let out their feelings and to process them, because even they're feeling this stress and this new level of expectation, and everything that they've had before has been ripped out from underneath them. Their friendships, going to school, the way that they did school. I'm nowhere near as good a teacher as his teacher was, or is. And we've had to kind of adapt and stuff in the way that we listen to each other, and how we each have to take turns and give each other space to just get it all out. Just, what do you need to talk about? Put it all on the table. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to listen to the words that you're saying, and I'm not going to think about my response. I'm going to just be empathetic and sit here in it with you. And that's really helped us a lot. Just feeling heard, that need to feel heard, because we all have it. And it's a time right now where it's so chaotic, and we may even be having a hard time processing our own thoughts and our own just internal dialogue. So allowing space and time in our schedules to sit down and say, like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on right now? What do you need to talk about? And even if it's my oldest is obsessed with Minecraft, and even if it's just he's upset because he can't do something on Minecraft, and that's what it is, then okay, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to give you your space to talk about your frustration in this game, and because that's a real issue for him.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you kind of grounding it back and kind of thinking about how that actually works in your home, and how it might actually be applicable for a lot of our listeners as well. There's some definitely things I want to add to this as well, but I want to kick it back to Adrienne and Laura to see if there's anything that you guys want to say before I kick back in. Nope, you're good.
No?
All right.
Okay.
All right, good. So as you're talking, Shanda, it reminded me of how when I work with couples doing couples therapy, how it's really important to be able to distinguish the kinds of conversations that you're having, and making sure that both of you are speaking the same language at the same time. And so one of the ways I describe the different kinds of connection points and conversations that couples can have is that there's sometimes you just need to have conversations that are what I call problem solutions conversations. Like, we have issues that we need to solve. What's the solution behind them? How do we define the problem, and what do we need to do? So we've got a lot of problem solution conversations going on right now around COVID, and how are we going to be able to solve these problems, like whether it's a house, kids, work, whatever it might be, money, all that kind of stuff. There's another kind of conversation that happens that's a little bit deeper, and we've referred to it in some of the other podcasts before, but it's alignment conversations, getting on the same page. So it moves it away from like the tactical stuff of problem solutions and moves it more into, are we on the same page, like philosophically? And we've talked about this in the last podcast about how we assess risk, right? Are we on the same page about how we view risk? And if we need to talk about that, and that gets back into maybe that example I gave you with the container, that we need to think philosophically and principle wise of what goes in that container. Like what's the most important things that we need to be able to do? Do we need to be able to put more emphasis on safety and hedging risk and that kind of thing? That's the whole discussion of alignment. What's going into that container, getting on the same page. The last conversation type is going to be talking through pain points and emotions and having space to have those kind of conversations. And that's what I hear you referring to, Shanda, is that if you can create that space where you can just essentially vent and just talk, and it's not a place where you figure out, okay, what are we going to do? What are the solutions? What are the fixes? This is about creating space to allow each other to just have messy feelings. And I'll say for myself, this has been something that maybe has provided a lot of ability for my wife and I to kind of make it through times like this, is that we create space to just talk about the frustrations that we're feeling, or the fears that we're feeling, or the pains that we're going through, right? And it's a completely non-judgmental, no fix environment. It's just like, I want to hear you, and I'd like you to hear me. And if we can create that space just to be able to connect empathetically and hear one another out, it might necessarily change the way you align or the problem solutions that you have, but that connection in and of itself is life-giving to a relationship, and it creates enough maybe a space to keep your head above water so that you can maintain some kind of connection, some kind of stability. And so I love that you added that into the conversation, Shanda, that to be able to manage some of the conflicts that come out of this time when we are kind of stuck in close quarters with one another. If we can create time and space to be able to say, you know what, we just need to be able to have messy emotions. We just need to be able to say, okay, you're not gonna look your best right now, and you're gonna just emotionally vomit everywhere. That's okay. That we need to be able to create room for that, right? And so I'd like to get your thoughts and opinions on that from the other guest hosts that we have here. But what do you guys think about that being a factor in this process?
Intentionality is huge, right? Like, to actually be intentional about having those conversations and creating that space. I think one thing, as if you have young children and you're used to having some kind of, whether it was daycare or them going to school or having a lot of that's just been taken out, right? So you don't have the opportunity to say, how do you create that space? And to me, it's being intentional with your partner of saying, okay, we need our own rhythm. And Laura hit the word of rhythm, right? Like, how do we get to that rhythm? And saying, whether it's, hey, once the kids are in bed, we need to create space just for us to talk, right? Like, just for, if you need to vent, cool, I'm there for it, right? If there's some progress that needs to be made, let me know. If there are things that I'm doing that I could be doing better that you're seeing, let me know. But it takes the ability to be intentional in those moments of saying, like, I respect you and I respect our relationship enough to create that and cut out that time for each other. And it's essential, right? Like, it's essential for a couple to have that time, and for a family system in general, to create that time for your kids and for your spouse to say, hey, like, let's have these conversations, because they are tough conversations to have, but they're very worthwhile at the end of the day. And plus, we are around each other 24/7 right now. This is unforeseen territory that no one's had to deal with during our lifetime, basically. So that's important as well, is to take that. That's what I really took from both you and Lee, you and Shanda, of let's be intentional about these conversations that we're having, and let's create the time and make them important.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, again, building that support system outside just those people in your home, making sure that, because that can get to be a lot of pressure. Okay, now when you start to feel anxiety and you want to be able to talk about that with your spouse or with other people in your house, that's a really good thing to do. But sometimes you need to also reach out to friends or to other family members. And again, do FaceTime. Don't just call or text. Make sure that you're looking at people face to face. It makes a huge difference to have that connection, to be able to see reactions and see how people are feeling on their faces rather than just trying to assume from a tone in the text or a tone on the phone. I think it's so important to talk to people, but expand your circle as big as you can so that you have more connections with people other than just those few people in your home. And if you're home alone, absolutely be super intentional about connecting with people outside of your home.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good reminder and kind of teeing back up. Even one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast is we're trying to create mechanisms for people to connect outside their home and just to be able to hear from other people. The connection that we're trying to build virtually, even we're all trying to figure out how to do it. We're all trying to learn how to do it and be able to do it in ways that helps continue to create healthy environments for everybody. And that's probably a good way to kind of segue and tee up, like, we whether it's with your spouse, definitely want to be able to do that, create that space for your kids. You want to be able to do that, but you need to be able to take care of yourself. And if that means that you need to be able to find mechanisms outside of your home to do that, even if it's virtually, like Laura, you said, like, do that with friends, do that with community, do that within your life groups at church. There's a number of mechanisms that we're trying to create to be able to provide that support. Something that we're also doing on the watershed side, that I'll kind of just promo here, is we've got Facebook groups set up for this purpose, to be able to have a place for you to process that doesn't involve your spouse and your kids. So you can go in there and just, if you need to, just let it rip, and just dump whatever you need to dump, so that you can just start the process. Because if you keep that stuff inside your head, it will become toxic at some point. And so being able to express those things and connect them with other people in safe places, whether it's in an environment like a Facebook group that we have, or if it's online teletherapy, those are all things that we're trying to figure out, how do we create those kind of supports for our community. So great way to tee that up, Laura. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts that you guys want to add to this one before we wrap it up? Because I think we could go on for a while about this one, because it's like one of those kind of things I think so many people can relate to. But we do have to end it at some point. But any other last thoughts that you guys want to add before we wrap it up?
Pray. Pray for your spouse, and pray for your kids, and pray for yourself, and how you're handling this situation and how y'all are navigating it. And if you need to have a difficult conversation, pray for that conversation before you have it. Pray for how it's going to go. Pray for how it's going to be received. Spend some time with God in it, and always keep him at the center of it all, and just make sure you're praying and staying connected to God too. So outside relationships and inside relationships are so important. And so is your relationship with God. And so keeping him at the center and always having him in when you need to have a hard conversation, it's really helpful.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder, Shanda.
Absolutely.
And I'll leverage off of that real quick, just because it's something I've observed about spiritual disciplines and how the refining process works. Is that and I'll even go broader picture on this one. The reason why I like doing marriage counseling is because it's full of conflict. And it's not because I like conflict in and of itself. It's because conflict produces refinement. It reveals what is within each person. And we might have our best ideals and what we want to be, but in conflict, under real duress, our real self comes out. And it begins to reveal the areas of work that we need to be able to work through and to strengthen. And so to that point, Shanda, like, as we're all under a different kind of conflict now, either conflicts that we had before within our families, our marriages, or just the conflict of COVID-19, it's revealing things about us that maybe need to be worked through and to be strengthened. And I think being able to be prayerful about what those things are, and to discern that, and to press into our relationship with God, because I do believe that that's how God works in our lives, is in under conflict. He begins to work in that conflict to reveal to us the things that he wants to really change and to mature and to grow within us. And if we do press into that, and we do seek prayerfully, like, Lord, how do you want me to handle these situations? And what is it telling me about me? I mean, there's so many times I think in conflict with my wife, I get back to this place where, like, what is this revealing about me and the kind of character I have and the kind of attitude that I have? And that is a very humbling realization and position to be in. And I think that if I can put it this way, even though marriage conflict isn't something that's inherently good, it has good use because it's revealing. And COVID-19 in and of itself isn't necessarily a good thing because there's obviously a lot of pain that comes out of it, but the stress and the conflict that comes out of it can be a good thing if you allow it to refine you, right? And so I'll just add that in there as well, just kind of piggyback off of what you're saying, Shanda, that being prayerful about it will, I think, reveal opportunities for us to be able to grow in ways that maybe we've been needing to grow for a while. So thanks for sharing it in that perspective and grounding us back in that space. So, all right, so let's go ahead and wrap it up here. And thank you guys for participating in the conversation, and definitely leave comments, reach out to us at Watershed or at Chase Oaks, reaching out to any one of us to say, hey, I'd love to be able to hear your thoughts or have you guys discuss this particular situation. I've heard other people go through a situation. I'm going through a situation. We want to really be able to talk through cases and scenarios that are really relevant to what's going on right now, so that, again, we can be a support and a resource for you guys out there. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Now, if you benefited from this podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, share with your friends, and make sure to leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help us to keep making podcasts and more content like this possible for you. If you have any questions, or want to get more content, or just want to stay connected with us, go to our website at watershedinitiative.com and follow us on social media. Lastly, if you want to get connected with a life coach or therapist, call us at our collaborative group practice, Lifeology in Richardson and Frisco, Texas at 214-556-0996.